All right, welcome back, Florida Football Insiders. It's time again. Once again, we are in. Coach, can you believe we are in week 12 already?
And it's flying by. I'll promise you, it's flying by, and I'm missing it. I know that, but it's
Man,
fun to watch.
we are in week 12. Florida Football Insiders coaching the kicker segment brought to you by Beef O'Brady's over on Bush and Himes. Definitely check out Beefs for all your sports watching entertainment. We were over at Beefs Coach on Saturday. We did a little pregame show from 2 to 3. We were doing some real-time updates and had a couple guests on and all that stuff. And so weekend good, Coach?
Oh, it's all good. Yeah, the girls and I went out to the beach, through the football a little bit.
I saw a little picture on social media. You guys had a little late afternoon at the beach.
Yeah, and a little volleyball now. They're into that and all of that. So my girls are awesome. They're the best.
That is the beauty of Florida. The middle of November, and you can go to the beach on a Saturday afternoon.
All right. No, there's no doubt. And it's the weather was beautiful, and like it always is here.
Absolutely. All right, we had a pretty successful day on the football field here in the state of Florida. The Florida teams went 5-2. One of the Florida teams, FAU, beat another one, FIU. So two played each other, and the only other loss was South Florida losing 41-23 to SMU. Coach DePrada's first game as the interim coach. Just your general thoughts about the state of Florida. Any of the games stick out to you?
Well, I thought FAU would beat FIU bad because I was at FAU for one season, and that rivalry, there's not like the Auburn, Alabama or things like that. You know what I mean? But it's FAU's definitely got is a leg up on FIU. FIU's just not very good, but Mike McIntyre's going in there and surprised me, to be honest with you. He's won a few games that I didn't think he would. So I mean, both teams, I think we're 4-5 going into the game.
Yep.
And so now FAU is 5-5. They needed that one, and they've got Western Kentucky. They got Middle Tennessee at Middle Tennessee, and then they play Western Kentucky. This game at Middle Tennessee is huge for them because Middle Tennessee obviously beat the dog out of Miami
right
earlier in the year, and so you don't know what Middle Tennessee has. But if they beat FAU, then FAU's got to beat Western Kentucky to even be bowl eligible. And FIU's not going to get there. We know that. And South Florida played really well, tied up at halftime, and thought that was I was surprised that SMU just kept going for it on fourth down and didn't get a bunch of them, and that kept and good for South Florida. They kept them in the game. They tied it up and had a little bit of energy, and but SMU's just too good, and the defense was just very poor again for South Florida. We all know that, and you're not going to build a program if you don't build your defense. You got to do that, and we always had great defenses through all the years, and always fortunately had good quarterbacks. So they got to build their defense. We know that, and Florida State got after Syracuse. I was a little surprised they beat them that bad.
Yep.
But man, you got to give Florida State some credit. They're really
they're coming on. They're coming on. Yep,
they really are. And that big game with Florida is looming. That's going to come here soon. Miami got a win. Which is good for them.
And not a lot of people thought. They were an under. At the point spread wise, they were an underdog, 1 or 2 point underdog. Which, if you just said that 10 weeks ago against Georgia Tech, you'd have had to have your head examined. But they were an underdog, and give them credit, they went in there and won the game convincingly.
Right, and then Florida,
yep,
that was awfully good for them, and so they had a. That was a big win for them. So
they're now bowl eligible at 6-4, so they'll be bowl eligible. They would be a candidate, potentially to come down here for the Gasparilla Bowl here. Area in a bowl game a little bit about down here in Tampa, so that might be an opportunity maybe for the Gators, for the local crowd to see the Gators again here later in December.
Sure, but so and it's Central Florida.
We're going to talk about that. Yep, what a game.
I didn't see the game, but Tulane has been playing really good defense, and Central Florida put up some points, so I don't know who Central Florida has this week. I know they played South Florida the last game.
They got Navy and South Florida.
Interesting.
Navy.
where that game is at, the Navy game. When I was at FU, we went to Navy and played there, and I was really concerned. We ended up playing really, really well and beating them pretty good. And defensively, we played well.
Yep.
And it's such an incredible. I had a chance to play at Army and at Navy, and that's really neat. I mean, those are. I was going to play at Air Force when I was at South Florida, but that game didn't materialize.
Yep.
So they're great experiences when you win. You know, when you win. So it'll be interesting. I mean, Navy. I mean, that Notre Dame game.
Yep.
What 45-42?
30. Yep.
So Florida needs to be careful, and depending on where they're playing it at, especially.
I think it's in Orlando. I think that game's in Orlando.
It'll be that could be a real good game. You know, you just don't know with Navy. You just they're those guys fight. They never give up. You know, those are qualities that you want in a team. So.
Yep, Central Florida. So Central Florida's big dilemma. I watched a decent amount of that game. They came out really fast in the first quarter. They jumped out. I think it was 17-7, quick, 24-7. Tulane came back a little bit, but again, to me the interesting question for Central Florida was which quarterback were they going to play, because the backup had been playing the last couple of weeks. Plumlee came back in, played the whole game, played really well. They really ran the ball really well against Tulane. Tulane had the number one defense in the conference. They really ran the ball. Gus Malzahn and company, they ran the ball really well against Tulane in New Orleans.
Well, I tell you, Central Florida, that the scheme is really good. I was a defense coordinator at SMU last year and played Central Florida. We ended up beating them, and we won that game good. But let me tell you something. Any time that they're explosive as can be, and every time when I was. The calls we were making, all that, I was concerned, but our guys, and, we got after them. So, it was the fifth time that I've lined up against Central Florida, and fortunately won them all. That's a little dig, but, UCF now is going on to the Big 12, and good for them.
I want to ask you a coaching question about the mechanics of being a head coach. You had two guys. You had one in the NFL, one in college. Jeff Saturday with the Colts and Coach DePrato at USF. 1 week notice that they're going to be the interim coach for the rest of the year kind of deal. Talk about the differences on field, game day, on the field, the communications that you're having to manage, listening to the offensive coaches, listening to defensive coaches, listening to suggestions, handling the game management of the operation of the game. Talk about some of those things that go into when you've never been the head coach before, and in both these cases, they've never been a head coach period at all in any of their career.
Well, do you lean on your coordinators?
Okay.
I mean, you go through the week and the offense coordinator is going to do what he needs to do. And those guys are usually, especially in the NFL, they're in their own world. The offense coordinator and defense coordinator, special team coordinator, they're doing their things. There shouldn't be any hiccups at all there. Saturday is played and he's an awfully good player, and he's just going to, lead the team and just stay positive with those guys, and that shouldn't be difficult in the NFL, I wouldn't think. Nothing's easy when you lose head coach and all that, but it's just a little bit different in the NFL. Those guys are pros. Those guys want to get paid, know. In college, it can be a little bit more dicey, especially South Florida, because they let go of their defense coordinator.
Right.
So you had a Sims that I don't know if he's ever done anything like that.
Right.
Got Prado, he hasn't done anything like that, so that's a little bit tougher on the defense, and
as far as making suggestions about things, do you think DePrato was in a situation where he'd say, hey, let's run the ball here, hey, what do you think of a blitz here, hey, what do you think of what about those kind of mechanics that go into communicating with your assistants?
Well, he may, but he won't do anything in depth because he doesn't know it.
Right.
Got to lean on Ernest Sims, and he's got
to learn. How do you learn that stuff? How do you learn those skills? If you've never been a head coach, is it just going through it for a period of time that you learn it? How do you, or do some people just have it compared to other people? It's an innate ability that you have it to manage the situation.
I think some of it's just some people have it. I mean, when I was, and when I look back at my background, of course, I've been in coaching for a long time, been over 40 years. And, when I look back on, even when I was assistant, I always thought as a head coach. I always thought if I was head coach, this is what I was going to do. And to be honest with you, when I took the head job at South Florida, to me, it was very natural for me. It was like I'd always been a head coach. I don't say that in a boastful way. I really don't.
Sure.
I say that being honest. I just always, there was no transition for me other than, making sure the practice plans were right and making sure that I had, people that were, I mean, a lot of administrative type things, that I had to do. Liaisons with the School of Education, liaisons with School of Business, all those type of things. As far as game management,
fundraisers and boosters, stuff like that, those kind of duties that you had to do that you didn't normally have to do as an assistant.
Yeah, but as far as the game, I was involved with offense only to, whether we were going to kick the field goal or not, or going to go for it or not, and those type of things. But I trusted our offense coordinators, and and that's their job. And hopefully you hire well, and those guys, and you watch through the week, when things are not going like you want, you have your meetings during the week. But when the game goes, I wasn't gonna call it. Now defensively, I called it the first 4 or 5 years of Florida, and I just called the defense. But it got to a point where it was getting so big and we were moving so fast that I had to get Rick Kravitz to really take over in the West Kentucky game, and he did a great job. I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
And then I hired Wally Burnham, who was tremendous. And then Rick and Wally ran it, and then Rick left to go to NC State, and Wally took over. And I had great defense coordinators. I had really good offense coordinators. Those guys just because we were winning games. Those guys took jobs, and they took jobs that paid a lot more money. But I was through the week. We met a lot. With both staffs, and so I had a real good idea what was going to go on. But those guys called it and did a great job. I ended up doing special teams the last 5. I ran all special teams last 5 years.
All right, I'm going to ask you about another coaching decision. Number 6 or 7 team in the country, Oregon's in a barn burner. We talked about this rivalry game last week with Washington. They're in I think it was 27-27 or 31-31. 2 minutes to go in the game. Backup quarterbacks in the game. Patrick Nix had been nicked up for a little bit, hurt his ankle. 4th and 1 on their own 34-yard line. And Dan Lanning, first-year head coach, decides to go for it on his own 34-yard line on 4th and 1 in a tie game. You're the number 6 or 7 team in the country. Have all your season to play for. They don't make it. Washington goes down and kicks a game-winning field goal. I got to ask as a fan, I'm just a fan here, how do you put your whole season on the line, 4th and 1 on your own 34-yard line in a tie game?
Well, it's a tough decision. It was Bo Nix, right? That was.
Oh, sorry, you're right. Bo Nix, not Patrick's dad.
That was out. And that would concern me a little bit. Well, one big thing, and I didn't see that particular play, but one thing that I always went on is I always looked at, was it a full yard or was it less than a yard? That was a big deal to me. If it was a half a yard, I'd be more apt to go for it. If it's a full yard, I probably wouldn't have. And again, I don't remember if it was a full yard or not. Either way, in that situation, certainly if they did over again, they wouldn't have done that because they didn't make it. And they felt like they wanted to, put the game on the line with the offense because he just was confident they would get that yard.
Right.
But it's, when you're on your own
34.
And he said later on he wishes he wouldn't have done it. And he said it was all on him and made that decision. And those are decisions that you live with for the rest of your life, to be honest with you. I mean, those are, I know people say it's only a game. Well, it's not.
No, because Oregon legitimately, if they would have won the rest of their games, they'd have had a legitimate gripe or argument to be in the Final Four.
Yeah, that's very true. And And Washington was such a big rival when I was there. Of course, I was the defense coordinator at Oregon for 2 years, and we lost at Washington the one time. We beat Washington at home the 2 times we faced them. They were huge games, and loved them. I love playing those games because I love it when the stakes are high like that.
Right.
I love it on the line. I just do, and I used to enjoy those games more than any of them. I get all amped up before the game. But the point is this: you got to make a decision. And again, boy, that's a tough call. Where it's at. And again, I didn't see the yard, so it's hard to see.
And the running back slipped on the play. He fell down in the backfield on the handoff, and I mean, I'm not the biggest analytics guy there is, but I mean, I understand the analytics say to go for it, those kind of things, but sometimes you have to realize the moment of the game and the flow of the game. I mean, 4th and 1, again, it's your season. I mean, I know the Washington offense was moving the ball pretty good, but you still have to have confidence that you have to make Washington earn it. By not making it, you're not making Washington earn it on offense.
With 3 minutes to go in a game?
2, less than 2, like a minute 50.
And it's tie game.
Tie game. Backup quarterback in the game.
Yeah, I would have, of course, I can say this now because I wasn't there, but I would have punted that unless it was maybe an inch. I might have gone quarterback. But I would have punted, one, because it's a home game.
Yes.
Crowd behind us. We're going to go to possibly overtime. But he might have just felt like that was too much time on the clock and didn't feel like he could. And
he's a defensive guy. He's a defensive guy too. That's the other amazing part is he came from the Kirby Smart, Georgia. He's a defensive coach.
Yeah, but if they make it, nobody says a word. They might go down and kick the field goal and win. It's a tough decision, I guess. I understand the decision because, Washington was strong offensively. They were scoring points, and he didn't want to take the ball out of the hands of his team. So, I see the argument for it. I really do.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know if it was a full yard or less than a yard. Right. That's really important to me to know that. That's a big deal how much of a yard it is.
And let's give a shout out to Michael Penix, the quarterback from Washington. He's a Tampa kid. He went to Tampa Bay Tech, so big shout. He's had a really good year out at Washington. Kalen DeBoer. Do you know Coach DeBoer at all, or do you know Coach DeBoer?
No, but a little bit of trivia. Ronnie McKeefrey was my strength coach at South Florida for 9 years.
Okay.
Great coach, great person. He is a strength coach at Washington. So I keep up a little bit Washington just because of Ronnie. Yeah. And it's great to see what he's done because, when I moved on from South Florida, he didn't stay long and he ended up in Tennessee and then he did some things for the military and he's just really, really good at what he does.
That's a sneaky sleeping giant out University of Washington. What a great program over the years with Coach James, Chris Peterson, Kalen DeBoer's kind of re-energized that program. They had some few down years, but man, that Washington program, they can be a powerhouse out west.
Oh, and playing there is hard. Let me tell you something. It's unbelievable, the mystique and the setting. They're right on the water. People can come in with these seaplanes and come to the games that way, and the boats. It's surreal. I think it's one of the most beautiful places that I've ever been. And the head coach of Texas, Sark. I flew out there and met with him. Yeah. He was head coach at Washington just about when I was head coach of South Florida, and I just wanted to visit with him about his days at USC, their practice schedule, how they went about things, because I thought USC won all those national championships and what Pete Carroll did. Right. And so I was my wife and I were on the way to Vancouver. So I said, I'll go there, but only if I could stop in Washington for a day and spend some time with Sark and his D coordinator at the time. And Sark and I ended up spending the whole day together talking about just practice schedules and how they went about business. And it really was invaluable for me and helped me a lot.
What'd you learn?
Oh, just how to set up the practice and shorten down the practice and speed it up and have the number one offense go against number two defense and vice versa. And because the speed of the game in practice is more important than going against scouts that don't run as fast and do things as
Okay.
quickly.
Okay.
And the defense, they have all the defenses. You run a similar defenses within your scheme that is like the team that you're about to face. And
Okay.
same thing offensively. Run a number of plays, get the thesis of the plays with speed and use speed a lot. And I did that, and it was very good. Practices were cut shorter. The guys were very tired because the high pace and intensity we went at was extreme. and so it was that's the that's kind of what I got out of it.
When you guys as coaches talk to each other in other programs, is it how cool? I mean, it's interesting. You always hear this when guys are either out of coaching or in the off season. Hey, I'm going to go call so and so coach that I know, and I'm going to go spend an afternoon with them. How do those dynamics occur when a guy calls you out of the blue? Hey, Coach Leavitt, I'd love to come down to USF or wherever you're at. Hey, I'd love to pick your brain about your defensive schemes. How does that? Do you like that as a fraternity of coaches? Is that a pretty cool thing?
Oh, it is, and you want to give information out as long as it's not somebody that's in your conference and those things. When Old Dominion started their program, their head coach flew down and spent 2 days with me. And I gave him a lot of information about how to build a program.
Yep.
And then he wanted all I have a bunch of books and things. I wouldn't give him those things. but I said, listen, anything that I'm going to share with you what you need to know. And he ended up being very successful. And he was going to be successful in his own right. But I never forget that. And then also when they started the program at Georgia State, same thing happened. Bill Curry called me and we spent a bunch of time. And then Kennesaw State, when I was in between the NFL and South Florida, they flew me up there and I spent a bunch of time with Kennesaw about starting their program and kind of how to go about it. So I was able to do that a number of times. And, I enjoyed that because I really thought what we did with Paul Griffin and, at the AD and all of us, and certainly it's all about people. And it was a lot of people that built South Florida. It wasn't one person by any means. And, I enjoyed sharing a lot of that because I felt like what we did was kind of special.
You did,
and done a certain way that was unlike, other places. And certainly the relationship with me and Paul was so good that always helps. You have to align with your athletic director and your president and with everybody else. You have to have a fabric that's binding.
Everybody's got to be pulling in the same direction.
Really do. And that doesn't happen a lot of times. You have to be servants to each other. I always said the greatest leaders are the greatest servants. And if you want to learn to be a leader, you better learn to serve. And and we served the community. We served Tampa. We served St. Pete, and we served everybody. And certainly the high school coaches,
right.
And you have to bend over backwards and gain trust, So there's a lot of things that were pretty special, and I enjoyed sharing that. Yeah.
I want to hit a couple more things, and we'll get you out of here. TCU with a huge win in Austin. I mean, kind of the script of the game was completely different than what it had been. TCU had been scoring a bunch of points, been coming from behind. This was a low-scoring defensive battle in Austin. TCU gets out of there. I think it was 17-10 was the final, I believe. What a job by a guy again, Sonny Dykes, former guy you worked with. What a job there going to Austin and getting it done.
Well, it surprised me because, I'll tell you right now, let's just be honest, TCU's defense played great.
Yeah.
And that, to me, was the difference of the game. And, where their defense has played good, but not like that. That was more of a staggering effort. And you got to give them a lot of credit for that. And now Texas's defense rose up also.
They did.
And did a great job. But offensively, Texas was out of sync all night and never could get into a rhythm. And either could
TCU on offense. Yep.
It did surprise me. I didn't think it would be a game like that. And I didn't think it was going to be outrageously scoring, fest.
Right.
But I did not expect it to be the low scoring game it was. and Texas scores on defense. I mean, that it was, yeah, it was something else. I was a little surprised, but give TCU a lot of credit. Now they go to Baylor, and then they've got Iowa State. And Iowa State has struggled this year, but Iowa State's still Iowa State. They're tough, but they got them. They got them at TCU.
Yep.
So if they can get through Baylor, and Baylor is not the same Baylor team they were last year.
Yep.
But they're still a good football team, and TCU needs to beat them obviously to get in the playoffs. But they win these last two, then they got the championship game.
Look out.
You just don't know. It's interesting now what's going on because how about LSU?
Right.
They
survived.
Arkansas, that's tough. Arkansas is a good football team.
Yep.
And then look at Alabama beating Ole Miss. Yeah. What a great game that was. And, Ole Miss had them. They had them by one. They're down by 6 and right there to score. And that's the game I watched mostly. And I was, there's some great games, and there's going to continue this time of year. That's why college football is so exciting and, fun to watch.
No, I want to end our chat this week on. I want to talk about the NFL note. One, your 49ers with a big defensive effort in the second half last night on Sunday Night Football to come back and beat the Chargers. A guy Justin Herbert, a little bit. How cool was it to watch? Just watch a guy you know so well have so much success in the NFL.
Well, Justin's a special person, and when I was at Oregon, he was on our team for the 2 years I was there, and Justin and I became very close, his brother and his mom and dad. And I can't say enough good things about Justin Herbert. He is so talented, 6'6", 240, can run, throw, and we all know how talented he is. But I want to tell you something, he's a better human being.
Yeah.
I texted him earlier this year and I said, Justin, can you send me a signed something for my daughter, Sophia? And, I first asked for a jersey, and then I felt really embarrassed because, he's not going to do something like that. He's too busy. He's got 1 million people going to ask him for things.
Right.
So if he could just sign anything, a piece of paper, anything. And then I felt bad about even asking him. He sends me this unbelievable jersey, authentic jersey, signs his name, and it says to Sophia.
Nice.
It was, and Sophia, you should see, she was so happy. And I told Justin, I just couldn't thank him enough. And he's just a special person. He really is. And they lost a close game there, and they had a lot of pressure on Justin at the end there and hit his arm on that one interception at the end.
Yeah.
But I coached in San Francisco, but I was kind of pulling for her at the Chargers. I know their head coach well too, Staley, who was at Denver Broncos with Vic Fangio. So I know him, and so I was kind of pulling for them. But either way,
good defensive game, really good by both teams. Good defensive game all around.
Right, it really was. It was a fun game to watch at the end there.
What'd you think of the wild finish in Buffalo, Minnesota? What a wild ending. I mean, the unbelievable catches by Justin Jefferson. Let's talk about the goal line situation at the end. Buffalo had stopped Minnesota basically on the half-yard line with about a minute to go in the game. How much do you guys ever practice getting off your goal line like that in the snap? Buffalo fumbles the snap. Minnesota recovers for a touchdown. Just talking to the audience about the mechanics of that kind of play when you have to get the ball off your goal line. It's not a kneel down. You can't kneel down or it would have been a safety. You have to actually run a play. And Josh Allen and Buffalo, they fumbled the snap there.
You practice all that. It's called a black zone. I called it the black zone. Anything from the goal line out to the 10. And if your head coach, if he's worth anything, you're going to practice all those situations.
Okay.
You have to put your offense in a situation right there on the goal line, coming off the goal line, and same thing going in. All those things. They practice red zone a lot more, and there's 6 and the 3 and going in, but you got to practice the black zone as well. And the day before the game, I always practice black zone with the defense with the scout team, and I always try to draw them off sides and do those type of things. That's all practiced, and it's all set up and And, hopefully you're organized enough to do all that and pay attention to all that. Now, at the end of the game, though, I thought Josh Allen, I was surprised. He ran the ball twice and got down there. I kind of was hoping he'd run it, keep running it.
Yeah.
Because I'm not so sure he wouldn't have got in, and then he throws a pick that was
bad interception. You got to be fair. It's a bad interception.
Yeah, it was kind of, I guess last few games he's done that a little bit. And in my background, I was a defense coordinator at Oregon when he was at Wyoming, and we played him.
Okay.
And we played right before our Arizona State game. We ended up playing against him really well. He was like 9 for 24, and we ended up beating Wyoming pretty good. But boy, was I worried about that guy. He's so big and such a great arm, and our defense just played well. It was at Wyoming.
Yeah.
We're on the field. They say you are at 7,000 elevation. It was a great experience to face him because I had a chance to watch all the film before the game, and he's so talented, just so talented.
You can see the arm talent, and the physical skill. People don't realize this guy's 6'4", 240, and can run through people like he's a bulldozer.
He's not afraid to do it.
Yeah.
He's one that's going to look for the contact, so which you saw in the game. So there's some great NFL games, and excited about the Bucs. They're in first place now, and it's a little different than it was 2 weeks ago. And I can't wait. I've got tickets to go to the rest of the game, so I'm excited to see them finish it out and see how they do.
That was a big win for the Bucs going into their bye week to get to 5-5. Atlanta losing, now they're clearly in first place. I think you're going to see the Bucs make a little move here. They're not going to probably win the rest of their games, but I think they're going to make a little run here. They got a little confidence on offense yesterday. They got a little Julio Jones got involved a little bit. Godwin back in the mix, and they ran the ball, Coach. They ran the ball. The guy Rashad White, Arizona State, ran the ball.
Right. I'm telling you, I really enjoyed it. And you take that trip, you go all the way to Germany, lose.
Yep.
And that's hard. You go there and win, man, you got to sit on that victory, and it's nice,
doubt.
And it was Seattle, right? With Seattle is they have to fly back and then go all the way back to Seattle. I don't know what their schedule is, but usually both teams will have a bye week. Man, that's a lot of traveling for them to have to sit on that game. And, but I saw bits and pieces of it. I didn't see all of it, but I saw some of the replays. Yep. But, they're making a run.
They are. All right, Coach. Well, great job this week, Coach. We're getting to the final couple weeks. So we got some more great games to talk about. We'll be back here next week, Coach in the Kicker segment. Coach Jim Leavitt, thanks for the time, and have a great week.
All right. We'll see you, Jason.
Okay. Bye-bye.